Boston College, who got out early out of the locker room break.
Venning throwing his right elbow in the Lampkin, fades away, swishes it. Chad Venning making his presence felt against Lampkin. 11 points for Venning, 5 of them in the second half. 39-36 Eagles, 3.5 minutes into the second half.
It wasn't just those first 3 minutes, it was the first 8 minutes where Boston College would lead to start the second half. A big reason why, the season's leading scorer for the Eagles, Donald Hand.
Into Hastings, who catches it on a near short corner, gives it to Hand, slinking from right to left, falling to the floor, it doesn't matter, and one. Put a hand on DJ Hand and he'll flex all over you. The leading scorer of the Eagles puts Boston College up 48-44, and we'll have a chance for one more at the line after the under 12 media timeout.
So Boston College got up to a 7-point lead at that point, nearly their largest lead of the game, which was 8. But SU guard J.J. Starling in the second half made sure that he kept his team close.
Starling dribbling from the logo, gets the screen from Davis, now drives down the left alley. His two-handed layup is clean. Starling has been the only bright spot in the second half for the Orange. He's up to 16 points on 16 shots. Boston College still leads by 5 with 9.5 to play.
Orange fell back behind by 8 at that point. Syracuse's hopes weren't pretty after Starling got them back within 5, but the Orange started a 10-0 run, and the last points of that run regained Cuse the advantage.
4 on the shot clock. Starling from the right wing, gets down the lane, his righty layup goes, and the Orange lead. 56-54, SU over BC, 5.5 to go. The first lead for the Orange since the 2-second mark in the first half.
So J.J. Starling again gets the Orange in front. The 10-0 run made it Boston College 54-46 to Syracuse 56-54. Eagles would get a bucket after that, tied at 56, coming down the stretch, needing a big play. Syracuse turns it to Kyle Cuff, and he makes a 3. Couple more possessions later, in a close game still, Orange by 1. How about Cuff again?
SU to inbound, and they get it into Cuff, who's all alone in the near corner, and he is the X factor. Second 3 down the stretch for Cuff. The Orange lead by 4. 62-58, 3.5 to go.
Kyle Cuff goes for 10 points today, 6 of them very important down the stretch. 2 threes in the last 5 minutes for Kyle Cuff. Those 2 of the biggest buckets of the game. That made it a 2-possession game. Orange would never let BC get it back within a possession, and despite it being a close, nail-biting, back-and-forth affair, Syracuse could breathe easy in the final minute.
Syracuse survives and secures its first win away from the Dome in 7 tries to start the season. 79-71 the final. The Orange back to 500, back-to-back wins for the Cuse for the first time since November.
So Syracuse, a little life again within the men's basketball program as the Orange claim today's victory, 79-71 over Boston College. And after a pretty bleak month of December, Cuse has a couple of wins here in the conference ahead of hosting Louisville, a team projected in the tournament right now, who just picked up another ACC win today over Pittsburgh, I should say. Cardinal come to town on Tuesday, where it'll be the Cards against the Orange in an ACC showdown inside the Dome. It's time for our Pepsi player of the game today. I would tell you it'd be J.J. Starling. That's who Austin Barrick predicted on the broadcast. Starling was big with 20 second-half points, but how about the 2 late threes that helped Syracuse win it from Kyle Cuff? He is today's Pepsi player of the game. 10 points and 2 key triples from Cuff down the stretch to help the Orange pull away in Chestnut Hill. Again, the Pepsi player of the game today here on WAER goes to Kyle Cuff for a couple big threes to help Syracuse to the victory. Our next broadcast will be that Louisville matchup for the Orange. That's a 7 o'clock tip inside the Dome on Tuesday night. We hope you'll join us beginning at 6:30. That's when McClure Remodeling Countdown to Tip-Off gets our coverage started. Double Overtime is next. I'll join Griffin Marcy all the way until 7 o'clock. We got an hour and a half left with you here on the AER airwaves. You can call into the show, 315-443-2011. Again, 315-443-2011, the number to do so. And we'll get you on the air in just a minute if you call in to share your thoughts on Syracuse's 8-point win at Boston College. Before we get to the double overtime, some thank yous to Jordan Leonard, our producer, Tyler Aiken, our engineer, Alex Burstein, who manned radio replay, and the entire WAER Sports Desk. I'm Andrew Selliver. I'm going to check in with Griffin Marcy as we get the double overtime started. Griffin, Syracuse wins it. The Orange, pretty convincing down the stretch there. They dominated the last 8 minutes of play in Chestnut Hill.
You know, the first 32 might have been kind of ugly, but as long as you finish it out strong, Syracuse gets the win. Their second in a row. Those final 8 minutes is really what did it, and from top to bottom, it was a J.J. Starling masterclass all afternoon. He's been incredible in his return to this team. We'll talk about all that and more, plus our talk reporter, Andrew Delapiana, will join the show. He was down in Boston today. We'll talk about Syracuse's big win over Boston College today. It's all that and more on the double overtime, and it starts right now.
The game may be over, but our coverage on WAER is not. Here on the double overtime, we'll be breaking down all the highs.
Copeland, left wing three! It's good! Quadir Copeland wins the game for Syracuse! For the first time in 1,856 days, Syracuse beats an AP top 10 team.
Starling drives to his right, puts up a layup. No good, but Copeland with the putback slam. Oh my goodness, Quadir Copeland makes a statement.
And the lows.
Syracuse walked into John Paul Jones Arena looking to make a statement. And Virginia said, oh no you don't. Cavaliers 84, Orange 62 your final.
Well, Syracuse heads into North Carolina and faces its worst loss in its history in the Atlantic Coast Conference.
Heartbreaking. The Orange bow out in the second round of the ACC tournament for the second year in a row.
Delivering our hottest takes along the way.
The expectations should be higher after a few years when Adrian Autry sets that bar, but the bar is still low.
5-star, Donnie Freeman. Yep. I mean, this guy has the tools. I think he could be the truth.
I think Lampkin and the combination of him and Carlos will rejuvenize this team and make them an actual complete basketball team.
Get your voice heard by calling in at 315-443-2011 or check out our YouTube at WAER Sports Talk. It's the double overtime, and it starts right now.
Hello and welcome into our WAER Ostrom Avenue studios. I'm Griffin Marcy alongside Andrew Selliver as Syracuse beats Boston College 79-71 this afternoon. A comeback from down 8 points with just about 8 minutes left. A little bit of a struggle early on, but starts to figure things out. If you guys want to give us a call to get involved on how things came back from behind to win this game, give us a ring, 315-443-2011, or give us a text, 315-556-3929. We're also available on WAER Sports Talk on Twitter and YouTube, both our live streaming platforms as well there. Andrew, right off the jump, Syracuse comes off from down 54-46 with 9 minutes left and pulls this one out.
Yeah, 10-0 run there down the stretch was big, as I mentioned there on Orange Overtime, if you were joining us for that portion of the program. You go from 54-46 down to 56-54 up in that stretch, 10-0 run for the Orange. And this is a Syracuse team that really hasn't had a lot of those 10-0 runs over the course of this season. That was pretty critical, and those Kyle Cuff threes in those last 5 minutes were pretty critical as well.
Absolutely. I see those threes fired you up a little bit. We already do have a caller. We have Keith from Casanova on the line. And Keith, what do you want to chat about?
Hey, I just wanted to talk about, the last couple of games we've seen guys on the floor who can create off the dribble, who can drive down the paint and create some shots. We're never going to be a team that's going to light it up from beyond the three-point line with the outside shot. And I wonder if we're finally being able to understand what our strengths are on offense, and that's going to be going down the hole, creating opportunities in the paint, getting opportunities to get to the foul line. And, I like the personnel they've had out there. Kyle Cuff, he plays downhill. He creates things. Of course, Starling being back, he can create off the dribble like nobody's business. But I like the fact that we are going down the paint. We're not trying to chuck up these outside shots that have no hope of falling.
Well, I'm interested to hear your thought, Keith. When you mentioned that, at first I was thinking, I think a lot of that is due to J.J. Starling's return. And I honestly think it's a big deal that the point guard, with Starling running the point guard position right now, it's a big deal that he can score because Carlos, when he was driving, didn't really present that threat of scoring.
I agree with you. And as a matter of fact, I think Carlos should be an option off the bench to eat some minutes, but I much prefer Starling and Cuff out there because these guys, they can create opportunities for themselves. They can score off the dribble. They can facilitate to other people. And Carlos, although, sometimes he does have some nice assists and stuff like that, he's not an offensive threat, where Starling and Cuff aren't afraid to go to the hole and go strong.
Well, thank you very much, Keith. But you definitely got your wish today. Kyle Cuff gets 17 minutes, and J.J. Starling plays 36, where Jaquan Carlos only gets 5 minutes off the bench for you. I thought that was a really noticeable difference there for the offense, and J.J. Starling just truly took over out there, and it's not like he was playing as the off guard on the wing.
No, he was running the point for a lot of that, but where he's most dangerous, in my opinion, his shooting has gotten better, and he can hit mid-distance, and he can hit some threes, whereas he really didn't do a lot of that last year. He's just so dangerous with the ball in his hands downhill,
Yes.
down the lane lines, and you can do that when he's running the point. You get the high ball screen set up, he comes around the ball screen, and if you're trailing him by just a step, he's got such speed to the hoop that he can run right by you when he gets that glimmer of daylight down the lane. And I think he did a great job of capitalizing on that today. It is fascinating for me. I mean, J.J. Starling comes back, and even when J.J. Starling was healthy before his injury, Jaquan Carlos was still playing a lot. J.J. Starling comes back, and Carlos goes from playing 40 minutes against Maryland and Bucknell and 33 against Wake to 19 against Florida State, 10 against Georgia Tech, and 5 today. I mean, Jaquan Carlos is basically being eliminated from Syracuse's contention of playing, the top 8 or 9 guys because of Starling's ability to not only score but also to run the offense.
Yeah, and you would think that you would have brought these guys in so they could work together off each other, but clearly that's not been Autry's plan to do it with. I mean, it's been one or the other pretty much all right now.
Well, for now. I mean, he ran them together at the start of the season, but
right now that clearly wasn't working.
Correct. I mean, the last 2 months for Red Autry as the head coach have been, all right, let me change everything every single game until I find something I'm happy with. And frankly, I don't think this team has enough talent to where they're going to win all these games.
Correct.
But for now, it does seem like J.J. Starling has provided a big boost, and I don't really understand why. There's no real reason for putting Jaquan Carlos out there if Starling can not only give you the offensive production, but also run the point instead of Carlos, right? That's a plus.
Yes.
And then you can have other offensive options in the game, like a Chris Bell or an Elijah Moore or a Lucas Taylor. Now, obviously, you need those guys to play defense, too, but Lucas Taylor, I thought, had a good game.
You need
so
those guys to play offense as well. Elijah Moore, Chris Bell, not giving you anything on offense at all right now. Chris Bell had just 3 points today. Elijah Moore hasn't scored since Maryland, so you need to find someone else to step up on the offensive end there.
Right. But if you're going to move JJ to the 1, it does make sense right now that Lucas Taylor plays a lot in that 2 spot because he had a good game.
Yeah. If you guys want to give us a call, let us know who you think should be filling in that role on the off-ball guards and wings. Give us a call at 315-443-2011 and text us 315-556-3929. We want to hear your thoughts. Get them on the air. Interact with you guys. We're also over on Twitter at W8ER Sports Talk. But to me, I think it definitely has to be Lucas Taylor. You saw the first half. He kind of went quiet in the second half, right? The first half, though, had a really strong showing. Had 10 points, hit those 2 crucial threes. But I would love if we could see Lucas Taylor and Kyle Cuff together, like both playing well together. It was today, and I think it was the Bucknell game as well, that it was just one plays well in the first half and one plays well in the second half.
Can you play them both at once? Do you want them both out there at the same time?
I'm not saying they both have to be out there at the same time, but some production from both of them.
Well, they can't produce at the same time if they're not on the floor at the same time.
No, I'm not saying. Okay, I'm trying to figure out.
Let's try. Yeah. Let's figure it out over there.
First half today goes. Lucas Taylor has 10 points. Kyle Cuff goes none.
Because he didn't play.
Kyle Cuff still played 7 minutes in the first half.
Whatever. Keep going.
The second half, Lucas Taylor only gives you 5. Kyle Cuff gives you 10 in a 20-11 minute split. I just want more of that, more of the second half where they combine for 10 and 5, not just one has 10, the other has 0.
I don't think that's a big problem.
I'm not saying it's a problem. I'm saying I'd like to see that going forward.
They're both small guards that can provide an offensive spark occasionally and can play good defense.
Correct. I'm not saying
so they're kind of filling the same role, and they're not going to both play all the time together.
Correct. I'm not saying it's a problem, but I'm saying I just don't see other solutions on this team besides them stepping up.
Well, no, that's not true. I mean, Chris Bell will have his once every 3-game masterclass where he can't miss.
Well, yes, but we going to rely on that?
Well, that's the point. There isn't a whole lot of reliable from 1 to 10 on this team.
Correct.
I mean, we've been addressing the same concerns from August. Like, it's known that there isn't reliable on this team. That's been known for a while. Nobody is consistent except for J.J. Starling. And, I mean, you could argue, Donnie Freeman when he's healthy and Eddie Lampkin are pretty reliable. But, I mean, J.J. Starling's the only guy that is trustworthy to go out and play a solid 35, 40 minutes every night.
Yeah, and I think that's where having Donnie out is that other option where he would be your ideal number 2, obviously. Maybe you could throw Lampkin in there as that option, but it's just the pieces haven't clicked at all. And then you got to see at the start Donnie and JJ playing a little bit together, but Donnie's still kind of adapting to the college game. He seemed like he was really starting to get into the flow of things in that month of December, early January, and then, JJ's gone. But you want to see what you have with the two of them together.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how long Donnie Freeman might be out here, because we got an update from Adrian Autry after last game when it was the first game he had missed, and he said day-to-day lower body injury, but he's in a boot. Like, there's no hiding that. He's sitting on the bench in a boot. And they cut to him a couple times on the TV broadcast today.
Didn't look overly active.
He didn't look exactly into the game or enthusiastic. So I'm curious, a lot of people would tell you if he's got a boot on, it's probably more than a day-to-day injury. I don't know. We can't tell you that. We don't know yet. But I would expect in the next week or so you'll hear more from whether he's, out for a long time or not. And that'll change things because he does provide, quality rebounding. He provides good athleticism and size. He's just such a different player than Eddie Lampkin, and he can do a lot of different things down low for you.
And obviously you beat Georgia Tech, you beat Boston College without Donnie. I just don't know if that's sufficient. It's going to last. Like these efforts that you guys put together, I just don't know if that's going to last. When you're going to see real quick when it's going to last when Louisville comes to town.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to play better teams than Boston College and Georgia Tech.
Yes, I completely agree. So I think it comes down to how long will this last as a whole. And so we have Ron from Syracuse on the line. Ron, what do you want to chat about from this win?
Hi, guys. Just a couple things. I wanted to say I really enjoyed listening to the broadcast today with the guys. I especially enjoyed that halftime kind of football wrap-up. I thought that was very nice. And then I really, too, enjoyed the call with Cuff possibly being the X factor. I think that was right on. And you guys do a great job. That's all I wanted to say. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Ron. I do have to ask, you mentioned the football thing real quick.
Yep.
Your thoughts on Kyle McCord headed to the NFL draft?
Yeah, this is something I'm sure, as a fan, I'd want him back, but I think it's, his dream to go there, which, most of those guys want to do that. So, hey, I wish him the best of luck. I'll tell you this, I've been a Syracuse fan for a long, long time, and I hope the fans appreciate what he did for us in this 1 year that he came here.
Yeah, I think if you hear the way that he talks about Syracuse, he would tell you that he felt more appreciation, a whole lot more, from the Syracuse fans than the Ohio State fans.
Well, I'll tell you, he just seems like a great guy. I heard he was great with the kids and gave them time, and I don't know what to say. What a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Any other thoughts from today's win? 2 straight for Syracuse, Ron.
Yeah, I will say, with Starling back and stuff, I think Syracuse, if he was here, obviously, with injuries, everybody's going to have him, but they would have won a few more games and stuff. And but just like I said, hopefully they can keep it up.
Yeah, I think something I really think we appreciate your call there, Ron. One thing he brought up to me, Andrew, there, he says they would have won a few more games. Any games that stick out to you that you think they would have won with Starling? I think you win the Notre Dame game and the Georgetown game.
Yeah, the Notre Dame game has an asterisk from me because Marcus Burton, who's the best player for Notre Dame, was also out.
Yeah.
So it's a little tough to play that game in the Notre Dame game of, well, if we had Starling, we would have won. Right? It's tough for Syracuse fans to say that because Notre Dame can say the exact same thing about Marcus Burton. Both teams without their leading scorer, and Notre Dame just got the job done. So I would be more cautious to say that. I would have given them a better chance. Yes, Georgetown, I think they win that game. And I also think they probably have a good shot against Wake Forest because we've seen how good J.J. Starling can be in second halves, and Syracuse got a lead in that second half. And then couldn't close the deal.
They needed their closer,
right.
And that's exactly what J.J. Starling's been. He's just been, especially in that, both today a little bit and Georgia Tech. Today he was obviously a closer, finished with 25 points, but the Georgia Tech game earlier on Tuesday, he was just hold the ball for the first 20 seconds and then get to the rack.
Yeah, I would say somewhere around 9-7 or 10-6 is what you're looking at if JJ was healthy. And I would probably lean 10-6.
And while that's not the Syracuse standard, I think the fan base would be a whole lot happier.
Yeah, there's a lot of different standards in terms of Syracuse men's basketball, and it's tough. Adrian Autry talked about after the last game. I'm interested. We'll have Andrew Della Piana on later in the show. He was at the game. He'll have been in the press conference, and I'm interested to hear what Adrian Autry had to say after this game. But he mentioned after the win against Georgia Tech how much noise there is outside of the program, and he was just happy with the way that the fans that did show up supported and how the players have stuck together. Because it's not easy when a couple things start to go wrong, right, for everything to go wrong.
I saw a clip on Twitter this week where he was talking to a reporter at one of their community events, talking about how if it wasn't for Coach Boeheim and those 47 years here, he made the standard and just made winning look so easy, and that's just not really the result that you can expect from time to time.
Well, I agreed, and the world of college basketball is different now. It is tougher to win year in and year out because players are leaving, and it's tougher to build programs. But it's also, when you think about it, they just don't have the talent that they did, right? And so you got to not only have better talent, but you also have to have more guys staying longer throughout the program. I just don't know how easy it is and how reliable it is to try and build winning teams out of the portal every year.
Especially when the guys you're getting out of the portal aren't necessarily living up to the hype.
Well, that's the thing is you never know.
Yeah.
Right? How a guy's going to play when he comes in.
It's a completely different system. And when you have guys playing 3-4 years, they develop over time. You can see them over time build those stronger relationships.
Right.
Eddie Lampkin in the Colorado and TCU system is different than he is in Syracuse. Just like Lucas Taylor, just like Jaquan Carlos, who people thought, he's going to be this great point guard to lead the team, just doesn't really fit in the Syracuse system. Hasn't really worked.
Right, and think about Clemson last year, right? Clemson goes to, Elite Eight, loses to Alabama, I think. That's a good Clemson team that comes out of what people viewed as a weak ACC, makes it to the Big Dance, goes Elite Eight. They had experience, and they had a lot of guys that had been there for a long time, right? Shefflin, Hall, the Hunter, those guys had played.
Anyone else on that Clemson team?
Well, I'm getting there, but those were guys that had played 2, 3, 4 years together at Clemson and were starters for multiple years in that program. So you return 3 starters that have been in the program for 3 years. You bring in a couple transfers, and 1 or 2 might stand out and succeed more than you thought. Joe Girard, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then you have a good team that can make the tournament. When you bring in 6 transfers or something and you're expecting 3 or 4 of them to start, there's just no consistency year after year, and you're trying every year to build a new brand and to build a team that can win with no guys staying over time that have played together.
Where like last year, if you would have brought some of those guys back, Like, you had the backcourt of Judah Mintz and J.J. Starling. You bring that back for one more year, which was obviously not going to be likely with the way this new era college basketball is. But that's where you have that recipe that you're talking about for the foundation of the program. If you would have brought back Judah Mintz and J.J. Starling in the backcourt, then you have Elijah Moore, who then learns from those guys and develops his career some more and more over time. It's just about not building and just being a build and return. You saw that from a team like Boston College, who was decimated from the year before. They lost their all 5 starters, or 5 leading scorers from the year before. So if you're not going to be able to return guys, there's just no building blocks to grow upon.
Right, and that's where, you might have 1 or 2 solid freshmen, but when you try and build a program with all new guys, right, think about what Rutgers has this year. 2 of probably the top 3 NBA draft picks, and you would think, oh, surely a team with that is going to win a lot and make the NCAA tournament. Well, no, because you've got all new guys, and you're not bringing 2 of the top freshmen into 3 starters that have played 2 years together. It's all new, right? That's where you have to build consistency over time, have returners that have played together. So if you think, for the Syracuse fans that want to move on from this year already, which I'm not exactly ready to do yet, but for those that are worried about next year in the recruiting classes, you have to think about, okay, can you have Donnie Freeman, Elijah Moore, J.J. Starling
Donnie's not coming back.
all together? That's not a guarantee.
I don't see it.
But if you can keep that group together, and they've played together for a year or 2, and then you bring the top recruits of Kai and Anthony
has to be the
Sadiq
right
White
blend
together, right? Then you have a real chance to starting off strong and having success throughout the year. You start off slow this year, you've got all these new players who haven't played live game together, and there's just no cohesion out there on the floor.
Yes, you just need to have that proper blend like we talked about. If you're a Syracuse fan, you got some thoughts on how the program can establish some more of this continued sustained success, give us a call at 315-443-2011 and text us at 315-556-3929. We're over on Twitter as well at WAER Sports Talk and YouTube as well. And we talked about some of those guys that stayed and build upon their performance year after year. And someone who kind of shined today, especially off the bench, was Kyle Cuff and led that Syracuse bench attack that really allowed, they out-dominated BC's second unit, which turned into be a little bit more of a difference maker in this game, outscoring BC 16-6 off the bench, and Kyle Cuff had 10 of those on his own.
Yeah, I mean, Kyle Cuff was the difference maker, and that's where Syracuse doesn't have a go-to guy. Right? Every game it feels like, okay, who's going to be the guy that comes in and makes a couple shots, and we really don't know. It could be Elijah Moore. It could be Kyle Cuff. It could be Chris Bell.
Elijah Moore, not going to be Elijah Moore at this rate.
It could be. It has.
It has been.
There have been spots in the season, and that's the point, is you don't know, right?
I know, but we're coming up on a month since Elijah Moore scored.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. but that's the point. I mean, Chris Bell did the same thing.
Yes.
And Kyle Cuff has been basically had moments where he is not seeing the court.
Yeah, it's just about...
So how do you... It's tough. Like, it's tough for you to have the expectation that any one guy is going to show up. So you're just kind of hoping that some guy does. And today it was Kyle Cuff.
It's been Kyle Cuff as of recently a little bit, and especially if you're going to see just these guys falling off. He might have to be the guy to take that senior leadership and take that role. Not a senior, the more veteran leadership, take that role to step up. He was the one that sent Coach Autry a text message a couple weeks ago saying, after, I don't remember what game it was after, saying the season split up into 2 parts or 3 parts. And well, now it's a new part of the season. Now it's time to reset and go to work. And he did that. He's been doing that as of late.
Yeah, I thought he was very good today. I thought Lucas Taylor, as we've talked about, was really good. He did a lot more in the first 10 minutes than he did the rest of the game. He had 10 points in those first 10 minutes. He had a great assist on a Jaquan Carlos 3 where he shuffled it back to him. He got into the free throw line, shoveled it back, and that was Carlos's only 3-point attempt, only shot of the day, and it went down. But for me, how can you get those guys to now turn this performance into an every night thing, right? How can you make sure that Kyle Cuff is knocking down, taking 4 threes a game and knocking down 1 or 2 of them every night? Because that's not been the thing.
Yeah, no, it's like...
How can you turn this into consistent performances?
And that's just going to have to be playing as a cohesive unit. I think Louisville is a team that can come in and disrupt. You've got this momentum built a little bit right now. And, you have a decent stretch in front of you if you can pick There's a couple tough games on here. Clemson will be tough on the road. Louisville will be pretty tough. Notre Dame's a winnable game. Pitt's a winnable game. Stanford and Cal are winnable games. There is winnable games for a momentum-building stretch
the ACC is so bad, at least in the public eye, that basically any game in the ACC bar Duke is a winnable game.
Yeah.
But as you saw today, it can easily go wrong. You're going to be in most of these games. You just have to find a way to win single-digit games, and so far Syracuse hadn't done that, right? They had all their chances against Wake Forest, against Florida State, against Notre Dame. They were in every one of those games. They'll be in basically every ACC game all year. They just get to the last 10 minutes and who can win, right? Boston College had the control at the 10-minute mark in this game, and Syracuse played the best last 10 minutes and won the game. So can you do that more often? Because you're going to have to if you want to win those games.
And Syracuse goes to the closer there in J.J. Starling, which they didn't have in a couple of those 2 of the 3 games you mentioned there. But I just think sooner rather than later, I think J.J. Starling's a great player, but he is not this almighty figure that cannot be stopped. Sooner rather than later, it's going to get figured out that he doesn't have a consistent option outside of him right now.
We'll see. I don't think that's necessarily true. It's just, it's not consistent, but he has had options, right? So it wasn't like J.J. Starling, yes, he had 20 in the second half. Kyle Cuff took 2 of the biggest shots of the game.
But if you're an opposing ACC team, you are so much more comfortable with Kyle Cuff being that second option than probably almost anyone else in of the other ACC teams.
Well, I wouldn't say Kyle's the second option, but
I was just going off the name you gave me.
Right. I would say right now for Syracuse, the top 3 options would be J.J. Starling, Eddie Lampkin, and Donnie Freeman when he's healthy.
Yes, and then I think if with no Donnie, I think you go Jair Davis, Lucas Taylor there.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the thing for Syracuse. It's not that I don't think anybody's going to stop J.J. Starling from scoring. The guy's just good enough at getting his shots.
He's going to get his, but I think if you force it to be difficult enough where he's got to kick it off, and they force more perimeter-based looks for this team, you're pretty comfortable if you're going against Syracuse in that point.
Yeah, but BC couldn't stop that, and Georgia Tech couldn't stop that. So
well, that's BC and Georgia Tech. I'm saying the better teams, and then you start seeing the recipe. Once you see the better teams diagnose it for you, like Louisville this week, or Clemson the game after that, once you put the recipe on paper, other teams can replicate it.
Yeah, let's see if J.J. Starling can be stopped against Louisville. Right?
Correct. That's what we're going to wait on here.
Because he came back against Florida State. That was his first game out of injury, and now the 2 games since he got back after that, he's been the dominant player in both games. So can teams stop J.J. Starling in the last 10 minutes? Can Louisville, who's got a good thing going right now, stop J.J. Starling down the stretch? Because that's going to be who Syracuse puts the ball in his hands, right? They've already proven now that J.J.'s the point guard. Jaquan Carlos isn't going to be out there running the floor.
That's a Louisville team that is on a 6-game win streak.
Yeah, they're good.
They are. They've gotten some momentum building there down in Kentucky. But we're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we're going to be talking to our reporter from today's game, Andrew Delapiana. Was down in the County Forum. Listen to Coach Autry after the game, talk to a couple of the players. So we'll be right back after this break with Andrew.
Set your red light shining down all over this here land.
The mysteries of life explored each week. I'm Kathy Mattea. It's Mountain Stage, live performance radio from NPR.
Sunday from noon to 2 on 88.3 FM WAER, your local NPR station from the Newhouse School at Syracuse University.
Delve into the rich tapestry of acoustic-led folk, roots, and Americana music as we welcome back Common Threads here on 88.3 FM WAER. Enjoy national and international acts as well as local artists every Sunday with host Pete Thomas. Whether you are seeking the comfort of timeless classics or contemporary gems and music discovery, don't miss Common Threads Sundays from 2 to 5 exclusively on 88.3 WAER, your local NPR station.
Are you interested in hearing music from Tuareg nomads, tuba throat singers, Congolese dance bands, and Jamaican dub? Well, you can here on WAER, on top of the world, Sundays from 8 to 11 p.m. with Mark Bostic and Connie Whaler.
Weaves in the lane, puts up a J, and it's good. Bully ball from Jair Davis. Gets it to go from 6 feet out. 4-0 Syracuse, a minute 15 in.
Back here on the double overtime, Andrew Selliver and Griffin Marcy. Double OT going up until 7 o'clock as we have about an hour left with you here on WAER. A reminder that you can call into the show. That number to do so, 315-443-2011. Again, 315-443-2011, the number to call into the show. You can also check us out on Twitter. We're live on Twitter these days at WAER Sports Talk. Go ahead and use the chat on there. We'll get to your comments about Syracuse's 8-point win today at Boston College. And right now we're going to welcome Andrew Della Piana, our Sports Talk reporter. He's down in Syracuse East, at least it seemed like it today, Chestnut Hill. Lots of orange in the crowd today, Andrew. It felt like a pro-SU crowd somehow on the road.
You're telling me, Andrew, I mean, multiple times in this game, I was hearing, let's go orange, dun, 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 let's go orange, and I'm thinking, am I back here and the 315? No, I'm at the Conti Forum in what you called as Syracuse East, as it felt like today's game with the amount of orange that was actually in today's crowd.
Yeah, I mean, we could hear through the TV monitor saying, let's go orange, and that was the thing Coach Autry talked about, the fan base really influencing this team. He talked about that after Georgia Tech. The fan base really influencing this team and being there to support them. A couple of the players really talked about it in the post-game in the locker room, that fan support means a lot, and today the fans showed up even when it was down in Boston.
Absolutely, and it's really it was the first thing that Autry said when he walked in the room. He said, I want to thank our fan base for showing up. Again, it hasn't been a great season for us, but for them to take the trip out to Boston College, it really meant a lot for a team that, again, we've talked about a whole lot, that is struggling to fight its way for an ACC tournament, but still to see the folks that came out today, it's hopefully a good sign of things to come.
Andrew, we've talked a lot already at this point of the show about that 10-0 run for Syracuse. At about the 8-minute mark, they really took over the game, went from down 8 to up 2. What was the difference maker for you in terms of Syracuse really changing the tides of this game down the stretch?
Yeah, it's one name, Kyle Cuff, coming in with just about 8.5 minutes after that timeout. I'm sitting there thinking Syracuse down by 8. They might lose to Boston College, who, in fact, is one of the worst teams in the ACC. And here we go again having these conversations of Syracuse not making the ACC tournament. And then number 0 checks in for, just the second time in the ball game. He scores his his only 10 points in that game, and Syracuse ends up winning that game. His impactfulness on both ends of the floor was something that his teammates really harped on, the fact that he is so aggressive. He's earning every single moment of playing time that he's gotten this season, and I really think we saw it on full display in the final 8.5 of those minutes.
Yeah, he really took control. He was that little spark plug off the bench
Absolutely.
that you've seen. Syracuse hasn't had that really offensive option besides J.J. Sterling. If Kyle Cuff can come in, not even give you 10 a night, but he'd give you 6 to 8, that could be a really huge impact for down the stretch, especially if you're going to be missing Donnie Freeman.
Well, we talked about so much that who is going to step up to be that number 2, number 3 guy for J.J. Sterling. And again, I don't think that's going to be Kyle Cuff on an every night basis, but we've seen the way Jaquan Carlos has played over the last couple of games with J.J. Sterling coming back, and of course, it hasn't been the same playing time with Carlos being, not the number 1 ball-dominant guard you have anymore. But again, Kyle Cuff is someone who hasn't started any games this season. It's mostly been Jaquan Carlos and even Elijah Moore getting the start in the last couple of games. But I truly think, guys, that Kyle Cuff deserves a spot in the starting lineup based on what I've seen from him in the last couple of games.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the way that Carlos has played. He's not playing, so it's not even the way. He's just not playing. If you have questions for Andrew here on WAER Syracuse, you can call us, 315-443-2011. Again, that number, 315-443-2011. And we'll take your questions up until 7 o'clock. Andrew Della Piana joining us from Chestnut Hill right now. You talked about what Adrian Autry had to say about the fans traveling to support the team down there. did he have any updates on Donnie Freeman's status?
He did not. Our own Ian Nicholas, who was on the broadcast, he asked him, he said, is there any update with Donnie? And Coach said, no, he's still day-to-day. But we did get something at the end of Eddie Lampkin's talk where he said scouts will be in the Dome for the next game for the Orange when he was referring to Donnie Freeman. So I don't know if there's a connection between that, but it's something that really perked my interest when we finished talking with Eddie.
That's an interesting, one.
Yeah.
He just said that, can you get a little more clarification? He just said Eddie better show out, or Eddie said that Donnie better show out for the scouts next game, or?
It was interesting. Ian followed up again asking what he's seen from Donnie off the floor in this last couple of games, and he said something related to his scout next game for the Orange or in the Dome or something like that. And that was the last question, so I know someone would have loved to follow up on that.
Interesting. Well, I do think you mentioned kind of who those second and third scoring options are. You want Cuff to start. I think Donnie Freeman is probably second or third scoring option, but he's not available right now. So We'll see when he is available. Your thoughts, Andrew, on how Syracuse kind of filled that void and managed to tie Boston College on the glass today?
Well, it's funny, the fact that, again, with something Eddie Lampkin said, that the fact that we had 5 guys in double figures in this game is not really a rarity, he thought, this season, that, 8, 9 guys could be in the starting line for this team. And I don't know how much truth there is to that exactly, but the way this team kind of found the right piece of the puzzle on offense where really everyone was getting a touch on the offensive side of the things. I think way too much in that last game against Georgia Tech. We saw a lot of isolation ball from J.J. Starling. We did so in the final 5 minutes, and for good reason, because the guy deserves it. He's the best player on the floor no matter who's out there playing. But the Orange, the way they spread the ball a lot more, I mean, guys, we just look at the turnover numbers from this game. Only 5 in the game for the Orange after they entered this one with 5 straight games with 15 or more turnovers. So everything was a little bit more cohesive. And honestly, when we talked to J.J. Starling, he said patience was the big thing in this one to make sure everyone gets a touch on the offensive end.
You talk about the numbers a little bit there, Andrew. One thing that kind of concerns me jumping out at it is, so Syracuse goes 29 for 59 from the field today. That's 29 made field goals, only 8 assists. That is 21 of their 29 field goals unassisted. That's not exactly preaching ball movement and working as a team.
But they didn't turn the ball over.
That's the big thing I'm getting out of it, Griffin, is that they moved the ball well, not so in the category of assists to made field goals, but again, you didn't turn the ball over, and you've done that a whole lot in the last handful of games.
What do you attribute that to, though, Andrew? Like, is that J.J. Starling coming in to run the point? Is that Syracuse going up against a BC defense that just wasn't as aggressive? Where do you see the difference today and why that number was so low?
I think it's honestly a BC defense that isn't tremendous entering this game. BC is really one of the few teams in the conference, maybe even the country, that switches on every single ball screen. So we got a lot of mismatches today with Eddie Lampkin in the post, J.J. Starling at the top of the key. And I really think they took full advantage of that. Even in the opening of the game where Lucas Taylor was shooting red hot from 3, no one was really around him to guard him in that situation. So again, this isn't the best BC team defensively you'll see on paper, but hey, you can only play the team that's in front of you, and Syracuse did a good job of finding ways to score tonight.
And I think we talked about the ball screen thing. I think that contributes to the assist numbers a little bit as well.
Absolutely.
A handful of times they were switching then. The Syracuse guards had a big on them, just kind of got right around them, got to the rim. I think that was a big reason why those assist numbers were a little bit lower as well.
Again, if you want to call in, ask Andrew a question, you can do that here on WAER. 315-443-2011. You can text into the show if you're interested in doing that at 315-556-3929. And, of course, you find us on Twitter Live and on YouTube Live as well these days. Andrew Delapiana is with us down in Chestnut Hill after Syracuse takes down Boston College by 8. Andrew, we mentioned this is the first 2-game winning streak for Syracuse since the middle of November during the broadcast. Does that provide any hope for Syracuse fans, any hope within the locker room going forward that can continue? Obviously a big step up in competition with Louisville on Tuesday.
I sure would hope so. You got to rattle off some wins if you want to make yourself in contention for the conference tournament. But the overall vibe I got in the locker room was that this team is feeling good after 2 wins. And again, it's a 2-game winning streak. So you look at that in landscape and say, guys, we've won 2 games in a row. We started 0-3 in conference play. Is that okay to do? And the overall general vibe I got was, yeah, it is. Like, this team is playing, I'd say some of it's better basketball right now. I think second half offensively was the best we saw that team on that side of the floor all season long. So there's plenty of good to build off this. Again, you were down by 8 points with 8 minutes against a BC team that has struggled all season long. I mean, this team lost to Dartmouth on this floor tonight, but there was a lot of good to take from this game that I think this team could use going forward.
And you talked about the team's kind of morale. I noticed that same thing in the locker room against Georgia Tech on Tuesday. Very happy, and team seems like they might have unlocked something. What about Coach Autry? How was he? What was his demeanor like in the post game? How did he feel? He seemed satisfied with today's effort from the team.
He absolutely did. Adrian Autry is a guy, he's got a little bit of a poker face. I can really never read what expression he's going to give, but overall, he seemed very happy with this team's performance. And again, he loved the way he played down the stretch, and he was very vocal about the way Kyle Cuff played as well, which is something that has kind of been off and on this year about how he's felt about the back end of that bench, where I think Syracuse has had a majority of their points this year come from that bench because the starting lineup has been so in and out. But again, Adrian Autry has been a guy that has been under a lot of flack this year for the job he's done in the first half of the season. You got to give him a lot of credit about what he's done tonight and the last game as well against Georgia Tech.
And he talked about kind of the noise from outside of the program and how his team has stayed strong, and they've gotten 2 wins in a row. Rich from Clay is calling in. Rich, you want to talk about Coach Autry and the job that he's done?
Hey, good evening, guys. So specifically today, the Cuff wide open three-pointer. I think one of the things, at least, that I've noticed last year and this year with Autry, even though this year hasn't been what we would like it to be, I think he does a great job drawing up plays out of timeouts, whether it's side out, underneath, or full court. And I don't know if you guys have any comment on that, but I think if you watch going forward, I've certainly noticed it. I coached basketball for a very, very long time. And I think on that Cuff wide open three, I think he was a third option, and just a really well-designed play. Any thoughts?
And Rich, I think a lot of people that watch a lot of basketball will tell you one of the signs of a good coach is coming out of timeouts, how their team succeeds and how many possessions out of timeouts they're scoring.
Yeah, I think, I'm sure you guys will be watching the rest of the season, as I will, win, lose, or whatever. I'm a fan till the end, and I know it's certainly something that I noticed last year. And, yeah, this was something to look at, and great we got a win. And I know there's incredible noise outside of the program, and the fact that they're staying tight together is a great sign. And, seasons change with the transfer portal and all, something we got to get used to. But a win is a win. We'll take it. I think we're 500 now.
Yep.
Correct, right? Hey, we march on. A win is a win, and stay strong, stay focused. More important, stay together.
Rich, we appreciate the call. Thanks for joining us here on the Double Overtime. Andrew, I'm curious, any thoughts on that, the plays out of timeouts from Syracuse?
Yeah, first off, I want to completely agree with Rich where this team could have been heading in a completely different direction and, really could have laid eggs in these last 2 games and go winless through their first 5 contests. So you got to give them a lot of credit on that end. But I completely agree on that, where Kyle Cuff is wide open on the left wing. He said he looked up just to see anyone was open on the back door. He said there wasn't anybody open, so I decided to take it, which is a sign to me that the play was not designed for him. So J.J. Starling is sitting out there in the corner wondering, was this play supposed to go to me? I think it was supposed to, but Kyle Cuff wide open. He's going to knock that down most of the time. So to see that kind of transpire right after a timeout as well, when Syracuse was kind of in the dumps in this game, almost down by double digits with the under 8 media timeout, was a fantastic sight to see. And to build off of that a little bit more, Coach Autry talking about how he's been so communicative with his team throughout this struggles, right? Because, as I mentioned, this is a team that could have really just dropped off, left about this season, started worrying about the next season, and they really haven't. They've stayed together. They've wanted to improve within this season, and then they can start to make their way forward.
Yeah, I'm interested. You mentioned the locker room, inside the locker room with the players, and Griffin talked about after Georgia Tech, and you mentioned today, kind of a vibrant group, and they felt energized. I'm interested in terms of, for you guys, like this team has had to deal with a lot of, I think that's positive, not only that the coaches kept the locker room together, but that those guys are energized by these wins because based on everything that's being said externally, they could be really dejected still.
Yeah, I mean, usually when you start to hear these losing streaks, you hear, oh, the coaches lost the locker room, this, that, and the other thing. The players don't play for the coach anymore. That's just not what you're seeing out there on the floor. I mean, a couple players here and there, you might think they're kind of bad body language, quit on the team, etc. That's been talked about. But this team, for the most part, seems to be a well-knit together unit. Even guys who aren't like winning, or not necessarily winning, who aren't playing as much as they used to, like Jaquan Carlos, seems to be still, when he's got those minutes, out there playing for the team.
I'm interested in terms of what you saw today, Andrew, in Chestnut Hill. It has seemed to me, at times, it feels like there's a big weight on the shoulders of some of these guys, and including Coach Autry, because of that external noise. And it almost sometimes feels like after a win, it's a weight off of the shoulders that they don't have to hear about all of the things that went wrong.
I completely agree on that, and at least not until the next game they play where they play a better opponent and they're not supposed to win that game, and then they, kind of have a tough game. But still, to your point, where this is a game, at least this is a game within the season that Syracuse really couldn't have shown up for. And again, they played extremely hard in that second half because, again, in this first half, it felt like, at least it did for me, guys, that Boston College did not deserve to be in this game in the first half. Am I wrong on saying that?
Well, there was a couple stretches where it was like kind of a track meet, and Syracuse was going up and down the floor, getting some good looks, and Boston College would scrape together a bucket here and there. But it looked like, Syracuse could blow this thing open, but that just big shot never came. So I do agree with that. I don't think you're off base with that at all.
Well, it's funny. There wasn't a single whistle in this game for the first 7.5
minutes. We almost blew right through the under 16 timeout. I was thinking to myself, I don't know if I've ever seen that to go straight through like that. And I think we came about 30 seconds away before a pass went out of bounds on the far side there.
Yep. I truly wondered if you guys were going to be on the air for 3 hours tonight because of how quick this game was going to go if we didn't have 7.5 minutes without a whistle.
Yeah, and we almost skipped over the under 12 timeout.
Exactly.
After that, the under 8 timeout. I mean, we were really flying by. Both these teams basically didn't foul the whole first half. Defensively for Syracuse, Andrew, what most people would say their best performance of the year against Georgia Tech. Today, how did you evaluate what they did on the defensive side of the ball?
I think they were a little bit shaky at times, but I really want to give one player in particular that played. I think he played his best defensive game of the season, and that's Eddie Lampkin. He really had a tough matchup today with Chad Venning, and he talked about it after the game that it was physical between him and Venning. It felt like an old Big East battle, if you will, the way Adrian Autry described it, where those guys were banging all game long. The physicality was there, and you can start to tell Lampkin, he was getting a little fatigued out there running up and down the floor, but he did a good job of keeping his composure other than the one time he got the technical foul, which he said after the game, I didn't really say anything, it was more to myself, so I'll believe him on that end. But most importantly, he took care of what he needed to
That's
on
the
the
Chris
floor.
Bell treatment.
Oh, it absolutely is.
So my question for you, Andrew, you mentioned that matchup between Lampkin and Venning. It really seemed like one of those more aggressive and jawing back and forth matchups from just watching from TV. I'm curious if any different in person. It seemed like it was a lot more truly going at each other.
Oh, they absolutely did. There was some chatter up and down the floor. Like I said, it felt like those Big East battles of the good days between like a Syracuse and Georgetown. Now, again, this I don't know if you can call this a rivalry between BC and SU.
Syracuse
Not
has
at all.
won 12 of the last 13. No.
Perfect. Not a rivalry if someone always wins, to my point. Eddie Lampkin did a good job of keeping his composure for the most part in this game and really coming up big when he needed to the most. I mean, you look at that rebound total, 13 in this game, and Venning kind of gave him a handful with 6 on the other side. But, again, I give Eddie Lampkin a lot of credit for one of the most physical games he's played all season long and still pouring in 10 points with not getting a lot of shots up on the offensive end.
Yeah, well, he also kind of got Lucas Taylor out of a pickle at the end of the game because bonehead play from Lucas Taylor to give Eddie Lampkin the ball when BC was trying to foul in a 1-and-1.
Give it to your 55% free throw shooter.
Exactly. As soon as he passed it there, Adrian Autry head into the hands. Immediate foul from BC. Read the scouting report. but he made both at the free throw line, so he kind of bailed out his teammate there with 2 late free throws.
One thing, Syracuse in the second half today. So first half from the free throw line, Syracuse goes 3 for 8. Obviously,
brutal.
The third worst.
It wasn't even 3 of 8. It was 0 of 5.
They started 0 for 5.
Yeah,
and then Chris Bell hit 3 straight.
And the second half, you go 13 for 14. Really moved your numbers up a little bit. You got shot 93% from the line in the second half, finished at 73% as a whole. You are the third worst free throw shooting team in the conference, but acknowledging these points matter and drilling these shots is starting to allow you. That's what's going to allow you to put those games away that we've talked about in the past. I mean, today you missed only 6 free throws. Those could be huge. Boston College, they missed 7. Could have made that difference a whole lot closer.
Yeah. We saw some games at the beginning of the season when Syracuse had a lead and they struggled mightily.
Game.
Oh, yes.
Don't remind me.
They struggled to make the free throws. But
that was the
today,
Colgate game. They missed 3 of the front end of the 1-on-1.
Yeah, I'd rather you miss 0 for 5 to start the game than miss those 5 down the stretch to ice the game.
That's a really good point.
So I thought they were good free throw wise in the second half. I mean, they didn't miss basically in the last minute when they got fouled every time up the floor. I thought that was a highlight. We talked about the turnovers, a highlight there. Pretty clean on the rebounding side of things. Obviously, without Donnie Freeman, I don't know where your head's at after seeing the game, talking to the players, the coach after the game, Andrew, on if there's really any shot that Donnie plays on Tuesday against Louisville.
Yeah, the overall general census was he's not going to be. He's still day-to-day, as Adrian Autry said, so there's not really much information we can do with that.
Yeah.
But to go back to your point about the rebounding, these are 2 of the better rebounding teams in the conference, believe it or not. That's been Syracuse's really strong suit as well as BC's. So to see that battle end evenly was really just what I kind of expect in this game. But it was just going to be the other factors of the turnovers and the playmaking aspect that I thought was really going to make the difference in this game. And Syracuse did the little things that they needed to.
Well, and you'll also have another top 5 ACC rebounding team in Louisville coming into your house on Tuesday. Cardinals today, they won by 4 against Pitt on the road. Those are 2 teams that are kind of upper echelon ACC teams, at least to start the year, both trying to compete to maybe make an NCAA tournament as, a bottom half of the at-large pool, 8-9 seed area. Louisville with the win by 4, and they out-rebounded the Panthers by 13.
Wow.
So that'll be a big area if you're without Freeman on Tuesday to look out for.
Freeman, obviously, your leading rebounder on both ends of the floor, and with he can not only. I think one question I have for you, Andrew, is without Freeman, these last couple of games, you've seen a lot more going to Lampkin and Davis in the post, and today it seemed like it worked pretty well, getting those touches down to the low block. Were you impressed with how they ran that offense through the paint?
I absolutely was, because Peter Majstorovic off the bench, he's been kind of absent in these last couple of games. So those 2 of Davis and Lampkin, they're going to have to put the heavy weight on their shoulders without Donnie there to play some big, significant minutes. And I really think we saw that on full display tonight, where Jair does a good job of getting to his off hand. He looks a lot more comfortable as well with the left hand when he gets in the post. And then Eddie Lampkin, of course, is one of the more physical players we'll see all day long, all season long. He'll always be banging in the post with whoever the opposing center is. So to see those 2 kind of work as a tandem a little bit more has been good to see, because we've seen a lot more Donnie and Eddie, Donnie and Jair, where Jair and Eddie haven't been on the floor a lot at the same time this season. So to see those 2 work together as well was definitely a good sight to see.
Still going strong here on the double overtime up till 7 o'clock here on WAER. Again, call us. The phone lines are open. We'll take your call here on 88.3 FM. You can phone in at 315-443-2011. 8-point win for the Orange today. Couple more for you, Andrew, before we let you go enjoy the snow of Chestnut Hill. Syracuse with the win today by 8. The Orange win 2 in a row in the ACC, and the Orange today, we talk about without Donnie Freeman, you have a little lack of presence off the bench down low. That makes foul trouble even more important. Eddie Lampkin gets the technical, but Syracuse did a good job staying out of foul trouble. What went into that today?
I think just not hacking as much as they usually do down the floor. I feel like way too many times this year we've seen some kind of boneheaded transition take fouls from Syracuse, and you're watching the game, you're thinking, what are you guys doing? get back in defense. I know transition has been a huge talking point for this team this season, where they don't want to run back in defense, so they foul, and they waste an extra foul just to allow the team to set up shop on offense. And again, I don't think that's a fantastic strategy to use. So I think today, transition-wise, they did a lot better job in that category. Now, again, BC did a really good job of hanging around in this game, kind of put Syracuse on its heels in the final 9 minutes, but a lot of credit goes to the Syracuse defense of getting back in transition and not allowing BC to score a lot of easy buckets.
And you talked about Lucas, so we talked about foul trouble a little bit there. The only one that really got into real foul trouble, Lucas Taylor, had 4 fouls. But in the first half today, Lucas Taylor had 10 points, really was on fire to start the game. Where did he go? Was it because of that foul trouble, or was it just something BC did to isolate him away from having that more success?
It was absolutely that foul trouble, Griffin, where Lucas Taylor, as you mentioned, had a hot start. He made 2 of his first 3-pointers in the first, I think it was 5 minutes. He was up to double figures for their 4th consecutive game. He's done that, and then the fouls started coming, and Lucas Taylor has to sit on the bench. And it was only a short amount of time, really, where he was on the bench, because he played a lot of this game with 3-4 fouls, but the first shot he took after, it was about late in the second half, it was the first 3 he took since about the halfway point of the first half. He clanked in, and I'm starting to wonder myself, was he just a little bit of rusty because he hadn't shot the ball in a long time and he was out there on the floor? I think that definitely had something to do with it. But Lucas Taylor, again, is a guy going forward that has to be a reliant scorer, especially with Donnie out on the back end. So to see that from Lucas Taylor, all great things to look forward to for Lucas Taylor, a guy that we weren't really too sure about this year coming over from Wake Forest, but I think in a game like this, he made his impact where he needed to.
All right, Andrew, as we finish up with you here, anything else that you noticed from in the game, post-game, talking to the guys that you think you need to mention here on the double overtime?
Yeah, I think something we really haven't talked about, or maybe you guys did a little bit early in the show, I just didn't catch it, was J.J. Starling is still absolutely, definitely the guy of this team. No questions asked about that. 26 points. He's the takeover guy. When there's 5 minutes to go in the game and you're not really sure who else to turn to, you give it to number 2. Yeah, he had an awful day from 3, 0 for 4, but the way he's still able to drive to the cup and make defenses shift a little bit and rotate, it's extremely difficult to do when you have that mismatch, and he did a really good job of taking advantage of that, especially with the big man switching on the screens today. I give a lot of credit to J.J. Starling in a game where Syracuse really, really was on the ropes in those final 9 minutes.
21 and 26 in back-to-back games.
Good to see.
For J.J. Starling. Yeah, you'll need that on Tuesday. I think that's fair to say. Andrew, we appreciate you joining us. Any big plans for the rest of the evening in Chestnut Hill?
Nope, going to head back home to Tewksbury. Hopefully my mother made a nice home-cooked meal when I get home, and I'm going to enjoy that and then drive back tomorrow morning.
Any predictions on what's for dinner?
I think she said chicken fingers, mashed potatoes, and corn.
Sounds like an elite meal at the Della
it's going to be
Piana
good.
Estate.
It's going to be good.
A real combo there. The corn, mashed potatoes, and chicken tenders await Andrew Della Piana before he hits the hay tonight. All right, Andrew, we'll let you go. Enjoy the dinner. Enjoy the family. We'll see you back in Syracuse shortly, and we thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much, fellas. Have a good one.
All right, quick break here on the double overtime, and when we return, we've got more on Syracuse's 8-point win. You can keep the calls coming here on the double OT. 315-443-2011. We'll take all those calls if you have them. Any thoughts to finish up the night after this?
Whether you enjoy the funky sounds of James Brown or the pristine vocals of Aretha Franklin, we hope you'll choose WAER for your fix of jazz. Weeknights on WAER feature specialty jazz programs, and throughout the overnight, Pub Jazz curates a playlist of jazz favorites for you to enjoy. Tune in at 88.3 FM and WAER.org.
Start your Sunday mornings off right with Sunday Morning Gospel from 6 to 8 a.m. right here on WAER. Hosted by Cora Thomas, the program features some of the best local and national gospel artists. You'll hear everyone from Daryl Coley to the Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir to the Winans family. More information is available online at WAER.org. Join us Sunday mornings from 6 to 8 a.m. for Sunday Morning Gospel on 88.3 FM WAER.
With so much going on, it can be hard to keep up with who's doing what and why. I'm Aisha Roscoe, host of Weekend Edition Sunday, letting you know whether it's news from across the country and the world, or a deep conversation about a novel, movie, or music, we got you. Grab your coffee or your earbuds and tune in to Weekend Edition from NPR News.
Sunday morning from 8 to 10 on WAER, your local NPR station from the Newhouse School at Syracuse University.
Snap judgment means your mother, your kids, the dog, and your boss are just gonna have to wait until the story is over. Join me, Glenn Washington, for Snap Judgment. Snap Judgment. Storytelling with a B. Do not miss it.
Sundays at 10 a.m. on 88.3 WAER, your local NPR station from the Newhouse School at Syracuse University.
Carlos uses a screen kick out. Lucas Taylor, left wing, got it. A swish right in front of the BC bench for Lucas Taylor.
Now, this music really gets me going here for this final half hour of the double overtime here at our WAER studios. I'm Griffin Marcy alongside Andrew Selver. Syracuse takes down Boston College at 79.
Name that tune.
Oh.
79-71, by the way.
I should know this, too.
Oh, no. I think we stumped them.
I'm going to concede.
I believe it's Riptide.
Yes, it is. It is. You're so right.
Thank you. Oh, it's Hey Soul Sister, I've been told. That sounds very similar to Riptide.
It does. It does. You know what? Shout out our engineer, Tyler Aiken, for that one. He's quite the guy, quite the music aficionado. I can see all the discs behind him there. It must be all his. But Syracuse picks up back-to-back wins today, or back-to-back wins after the win today, for the first time since mid-November where they beat Colgate and Youngstown State, but the first time they pick up back-to-back wins versus Power 5 teams since Virginia Tech and Louisville last year. That was in February and March. I have a question for you, Andrew, and that's, is this team building momentum, or are these just two bad teams? Do they
some both, maybe. I don't know. Georgia Tech and Boston College are certainly not the cream of the crop. Of the ACC. They are not the elite corn that Andrew Delapiana is going home to. I mean, Georgia Tech got walloped by SMU today. We don't need to talk about that, but they were losing by 30 at halftime. You're going to play better competition. You're going to play better competition on Tuesday. And so while I do think that Syracuse has improved, and I think there's only so much you can get better game to game at. I think the biggest difference is that Starling's back healthy and putting up 20 points in the last two games. Like, that's the biggest area where I see the growth. And you're not playing Jaquan Carlos as much. You're not forced to. That's where I see Syracuse getting better, but I do think that they had a little bit of luck in that they didn't play the best teams. Now, you could be feeling a little different about this team if they win, because if you can win against Louisville, you got Notre Dame coming into town, you got it at home, you've got Starling healthy in that game. I would favor the Orange in that one. So if you can beat Louisville Tuesday, you've got a chance to put four straight together. Then you might feel a little different about how things are going.
Especially going into Clemson that game. Give us a call, your guys' thoughts. We're talking, was this momentum building or is this just bad teams beating up on bad teams here? Give us a call. Let us know what your thoughts. If we're on an island here, what you got. 315-443-2011. That's 315-443-2011. Give us a call. We want to hear your thoughts. You can text us as well, 315-556-3929. Give us your name and where you're from in a take, and we'll get it on the air. We'll talk all about it. We're also over on Twitter and YouTube at WAER Sports Talk. To me, I think it's, like you said, a little bit of both. I think it's the only way to put it. It's not one strong thing or the other. I lean a little bit more towards that it's bad teams you're playing. I think Louisville, or not Louisville, that's on Tuesday. Boston College and Georgia Tech, two bad teams. And Georgia Tech just beat up on Boston College by 20 points last week. It just shows the lack of consistency that Georgia Tech can go beat Boston College by 20. They lose their next two games, one of them not particularly close. Boston College can compete with one, not the other. There's no consistency. I just don't think these are that good of teams.
Yeah, well, the lack of consistency comes from Georgia Tech. That's been the name of the game of the Damon Stoudemire era down in Atlanta. They'll go beat Duke, and then they'll lose by 40 to SMU. That's kind of what Georgia Tech does the last 2 years. So I thought Syracuse put together pretty similar performances. Georgia Tech game was a little more sloppy. It felt like really it was fragmented. There wasn't rhythm in that game, especially for both offenses. But I thought Syracuse played at a similar level. The thing is, that level, now that Starling's back, is a level that you can probably win half of your ACC games at. But it's not a level that's going to get you to the NCAA tournament. I mean, you're working on a steep uphill climb right now if you want to do that.
You
gotta run the gauntlet.
You got to probably win. You're already at 8 losses. Last year you didn't get in at 20-12. I mean, you don't have much wiggle room.
You need to win a lot here. But you play a bunch of games that it's the ACC's like the mound of mediocre. Like they're all average teams, right? If you go down the list, sure, some are better than others, right? You think of Louisville and Pitt in this next stretch, where you also have Notre Dame and Clemson. All those teams are okay, but like Louisville and Pitt,
Clemson's another good team.
Yeah, but they're not quite as good, I think, as Louisville and Pitt, and those are the headliners of that group, and those teams aren't excellent.
No.
Right? You would have a chance in all of those.
Top-tier game you're not winning in this conference. Not a shot is Duke.
Right. But then
Blue
you go
Devils are gonna come in
Stanford
here,
and
you're
Cal.
worthy by
Those
40.
are winnable games. Boston College, Miami. Carolina's winnable this year. NC State's winnable. Virginia Tech, SMU, Virginia. That's your schedule. Nobody on there screams, you can't beat them. You got a shot in all of these games, but that's the problem is they're all average. They're all mediocre.
But Syracuse is also average, so
Correct.
average against average. You don't know.
So they'll win some of them and they'll lose some of them.
I think you'll be good enough to make the ACC tournament. And you're now, after you picked up both of these wins here, you moved all the way up from being dead last. You moved up to 11th in the ACC. So now you got a little bit of cushion from making a little bit of a postseason effort. Who knows if that'll hold?
Yeah, I don't think. For now, you can check back on this in a couple weeks. I don't think making the ACC tournament's the big concern. I just think that Syracuse will have to exceed expectations in terms of you're going to play in a bunch of single-digit ACC games, and you're just going to have to win a lot more than you lose if you want any chance of making this a successful season. Because my guess is they go right around 500 again because they're playing, as I mentioned, the mound of mediocre, and they're just going to cut right through it and win half and lose half is my guess.
Yeah, with 15 games left, you probably do hover around that 8-7 win mark. But, if you get up to, hey, if they got up to like 10-12, you can't complain about that.
Yeah, how many games they got left? 15?
So 20 games
left. If they hit 12, then a NCAA tournament's back on. Like, you got a shot. But
that's just not happening.
But again, that would be winning.
Don't get your hopes up,
a lot
listeners.
more games over your expected average because you are average.
Average is average. If you guys have any thoughts on Syracuse's rest of conference slate, if they're anything more than average, give us a call at 315-443-2011 or text us at 315-556-39. You can call in, give us any predictions you got, any takes you got that you think how this season could go the rest of the way. But circling back to today's game and how that can connect towards these rest of the wins and building things up. And I think part of that could be the different it all is going to depend, right, on how long Donnie Freeman's out.
Yeah.
But today, the ball movement in the offense just looked like it moved a little bit differently. I think part of that's when you had Jaquan Carlos out there running the point, it was very ball dominant with him holding the ball for a lot of the shot clock. But he, as you can see, his minutes have dwindled down. Now the offensive structure has kind of changed a lot with the ball just moving a lot quicker, everything skipping around, whether it's a moving off-ball movement. Things are just changing out there, and see if that could bring you a little bit more success.
And I do think that they've figured things out a little bit on the defensive side of the ball to where, like, they're not just giving up points at will every time down the floor, and that was a problem early on. So now you're in the games with your defense. You're just going to need to get some big buckets down the stretch from guys. I do think if Donnie Freeman can get healthy, that would be important, but you are staring at a big stretch here when we talked about, in terms of these average teams, the next four you've got some probably middle to upper middle teams in the ACC with the Louisville, Clemson, Pitt stretch. Like, those are big games that you would want Donnie Freeman available for, because you'll face some good bigs down low that you want him to have the agility to battle with. I just don't know if he's going to be ready to play, and that's a big problem for Syracuse.
Especially when you've seen right now Syracuse's big man room is just – the front court is not agile-based. It is strength and power.
Right.
Freeman gives you more of that dynamic.
Yeah, and a flex guy that can step out and shoot 18-footers or three-pointers, right, that Jair Davis and Eddie Lampkin aren't going to do. Majstorovic shouldn't do. He sometimes tries a three. He did today.
Didn't look good.
Yeah, he probably should stop doing that. But I just don't know how they're going to stay out of foul trouble every game, right? So that's where the Donnie Freeman injury could hurt you, is you got lucky, I guess, or played well enough today where you weren't in foul trouble down low. But if you get foul trouble down low without Freeman,
what are you doing when Eddie Lampkin has 4 fouls?
Well, Majstorovic has got to come in, but that's your only main guy down there.
Yeah, that's just not gonna. It's just not gonna work.
Well, it could, but if 2 of them get in foul trouble, then you got a real problem.
Yeah, I mean, either way, I think if Lampkin goes out and it's Majstorovic playing you the clutch minutes down the stretch at your 4/5, maybe you slide Jair over to the 5.
Yeah,
just don't think that's gonna be pretty at all.
Not against certain teams, it won't be.
Yeah, I mean, anyone with remotely a strength or a strong centerpiece there at the 5.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing how they match up with Louisville. We talked about Louisville's strength being on the glass. Mm-hmm. That'll be interesting to watch.
That'll be interesting. We'll definitely talk about Louisville a little bit later. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, it's about midway through the season right now. We're going to do a halftime checkup from how we've been seeing all season long from a couple of different players. We're going to take a quick break, but you're listening to Double Overtime right here on WAER.
I listen to Bullseye because no show does a better job of showcasing the best creators we have today.
It makes me happy to hear music I've never heard before, voices I'd never thought to listen to, and culture recommendations that are outside my comfort zone. That's why I listen to Bullseye. You should too.
Bullseye's your guide to what's good from MaximumFun.org and NPR.
Sunday mornings at 11 on 88.3 WAER, your local NPR station from the Newhouse School at Syracuse University.
Set your red light shining down all over this here land.
The mysteries of life explored each week. I'm Kathy Mattea. It's Mountain Stage, live performance radio from NPR.
Sunday from noon to 2 on 88.3 FM WAER, your local NPR station from the Newhouse School at Syracuse University.
Delve into the rich tapestry of acoustic-led folk, roots, and Americana music as we welcome back Common Threads here on 88.3 FM WAER. Enjoy national and international acts as well as local artists every Sunday with host Pete Thomas. Whether you are seeking the comfort of timeless classics or contemporary gems and music discovery, don't miss Common Threads Sundays from 2 to 5 exclusively on 88.3 WAER, your local NPR station.
"20 minutes left on your double overtime programming until 7 o'clock Eastern time here on WAER. I'm Andrew Selliver, Griffin Marcy with me, and Syracuse headed back to Syracuse with a win. The Orange go to Chestnut Hill. They take down Boston College by 8 today, 79-71 the final. And Syracuse is headed back here to a snowy central New York with back-to-back wins under its belt. Orange a little bit of momentum headed into Tuesday against Louisville. And we're about at the halfway mark of the season. Syracuse 16 games in, 15 games to go. The Orange 500 on the season. Let's check up on Syracuse basketball, and we'll check up on certain individuals within the program and give you our diagnosis. Griffin, go to you first. J.J. Starling, your diagnosis.
So we got 4 different categories here of on this diagnosis. You got a clean bill of health, on the mend, under the weather, and on life support. And right now with J.J. Starling, no question about it, He's got a clean bill of health since he's come back from that broken hand. Been absolutely dominant for this team. He's been the main reason they've won each of these last 2 games, and has gotten injected a little bit of life into this program right now. There's no question about how he's dominated and really led this team in the scoring department.
Yeah, I'm with you, but I'm going on the mend. I'm going J.J. Starling is on the incline because he continues to progress back to full health after the injury. He's getting better and better.
I agree. I just don't know if he can get much better.
Oh, I think he's got more than 26 in store on Tuesday.
Really?
Yes, I think we see him start to trend back toward the, 38 against Youngstown State?
All right.
Yeah, I think he's going to keep going up. So he's on the mend because he gives you more than 26 against Louisville on Tuesday.
All right, that's quite the number. Well, so we start on the perimeter, but let's go move on the inside where we head over to Eddie Lampkin. Andrew, where are you diagnosing him at?
Yeah, I got clean bill for Mr. Lampkin today. Eddie has gotten better. He's gotten a little better in the system. He's gotten better in terms of how he can play more minutes. He played a lot of minutes today, Eddie, with Donnie Freeman out. You got 33 good minutes today from Lampkin. You got another double-double. He really cleaned up shop down low. I thought this was one of the better defensive games from Eddie Lampkin. Andrew Delapiana joined the show. He said that as well. And so I say clear health for Mr. Lampkin, who put up a good performance.
So I'm going to flip it right here with you, and I'm going to go over on the mend because I still think there's a little bit more from him. Maybe as a distributor, you've seen flashes of him doing really good with the ball in his hands, and as a passer, he only had 3 assists today. So I think we can get a little bit more out of that role because it's been so much J.J. Starling dominant. I think you can work a little bit more of the offense through Lampkin, but I do agree. On the rise, you've seen some really not strong performances from Lampkin where he's been quiet, whether it's getting called out on Twitter by Derek Coleman and not honoring the number 44. You've seen bad performances. He really seems to have found something. Maybe that's just because J.J. Starling's back. I'm giving him on the mend.
Yeah, you mentioned that Twitter moment. I'm going to give a brief intermission to our game show here and give the Syracuse fan base a quick on the mend mention because they've gotten a little more supportive over the last week. I think results helped that. But they showed out strong today in Chestnut Hill. So quick honorable mention on the mend to the Syracuse fan base who has been at times pretty brutal this season with the results coming in the way they have. Lucas Taylor, take it away, Griffin.
On the mend for sure. You've seen he hasn't played 2 full halves of great basketball, but he's got 6 straight games now with at least 2 threes. He's been high on the rise. I just need a full 40 minutes before I can give him a clean bill of health, but he's come in, played some really valuable minutes and given some clutch buckets on the wing for you when you had guys like Chris Bell and Elijah Moore who have not stepped up. Lucas Taylor's came in and given you some sort of impact.
Yeah, I'm totally with you there on Lucas Taylor because I thought he was very strong for the first 10 minutes of this ball game. I thought he had a couple really good passes to set up teammates as well. And he's one of the better one-on-one, man-on-man defenders on this team. And he can really lock down some of the good guards that he'll go against. I'm interested to see you face Louisville on Tuesday. I would be interested to see who they go with against Louisville's top threats. Obviously, Rain Smith, who went for 25 today, but then Chucky Hepburn, the main facilitator. I would probably venture to guess that they go Hepburn on or Taylor on Hepburn. It is my initial guess for defensive matchup for Syracuse. That'll be a fun one if we get to watch that one-on-one on Tuesday because I've been impressed all season with Lucas Taylor's defensive ability, and now he's starting to find a groove on the offensive side of the ball.
And someone who you thought would have a little bit better of a defensive impact and offensive impact.
Yeah.
You get to what was supposed to be the point guard of this team, and Andrew, what do you diagnose Jaquan Carlos in?
Yeah, you diagnose him with not very good. Actually, basically absent right now, and life support is what we label that bottom category. I don't know if that's quite fair because it's not like he's playing poorly. He's just not playing at all.
Yeah.
And so I have created my own category, and that is he did not show up for his checkup. And so we have no diagnosis because he didn't show up. Because he didn't play.
Only 5 minutes today, just not a strong performance from a guy who for a long time was playing all 40.
Yeah.
Maybe a slow day for him was 36. And a lot of fans weren't happy with the performance, the product he was putting out there on the floor in terms of leading the team. Came out really strong maybe to start the year, but then it kind of faded off real quick of what he thought this impact would be. So I'm also going to go with, I'll join your category there. Did not show up
You like that?
for his checkup, I think, or rather than life support, because right now just isn't even getting a chance.
Yeah, we do have somebody that we have to go with that bottom category on, though, and that's Elijah Moore.
Elijah Moore, without a doubt, is currently on the category of life support. Haven't scored since Maryland. Barely, he's gotten the start the last 2 games, but the previous 2 before that, he had played a combined 5 minutes. He's been starting the game, but hasn't done anything with it. He only played 13 minutes today. No assists, 0 for 2 from the field. Been practically invisible out there. I mean, just really top to bottom, not giving you anything.
Yeah, the freshman woes have really set in the middle of the season for Elijah Moore. It's kind of inexplicable.
Especially after he lit it up against Tennessee.
Yeah, you thought he was on the mend. He was going up and up there in November into December, and now all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, this guy looks like he just doesn't belong out there on the floor, because he really is just a nobody. He's just not contributing anywhere on the stat sheet.
And it doesn't make any sense either that you went, Tennessee had 24, then 2 bad games, 4 and 6 against Notre Dame and Albany, 10 versus Georgetown, and 16 versus Maryland, and then you don't score again. So that's the last time you scored was Maryland. You don't score from there on out. Just really inexplicable, like you said.
I'm interested in your thoughts. Andrew Delapiana called for Kyle Cuff to start Tuesday. Is Cuff in there for more?
If Kyle, I say yes, give it a shot. I think you need to see if Kyle Cuff's impact is more of a short-term spark. Maybe he doesn't not as effective over longer periods of time. I think those Elijah Moore minutes allow Kyle Cuff to come in, be that second unit spark plug. But right now, Elijah Moore's not giving you anything. So what Kyle Cuff can't hurt.
Yeah, I mean he could. I don't know.
Yeah.
But here's where I think maybe not. I think that Adrian Autry has gone. He's done everything and then some to tinker with the lineup all year. But you've won 2 ACC games in a row, and you've had the same starting lineup for the 2 of them.
It's hard to make that switch.
Unless Donnie Freeman's healthy, I would venture to guess he doesn't make a change on Tuesday.
I wouldn't expect it, especially, what if Elijah Moore does give you something, and that lineup starts looking really good? You raises that ceiling of this team and the floor just a little bit more. You talked about Coach Autry there. So, Andrew, we got one last person here for a diagnosis, and it's the head honcho. Where are you putting him at?
Yeah,
season long.
This is a tough one for me. You check in over the course of the front half of the season. I think my perspective on him is slightly different than the general fan base perspective. You've had certain people call that, he maybe shouldn't be coaching this team. I think it's a little early to say that. I think you give guys 3-4 years, and then you can say that, because then they have a chance to build their program. So we talked at the top of the show about how different it is to try and rebuild a whole starting lineup out of the portal and out of freshman recruiting every year versus having consistency of guys rising through the program and playing multiple years in starting roles. You really haven't had a chance to do that yet in 2 seasons as the head coach. So I'm going to go on the mend and say that things might be trending upward if, for Adrian Autry, he can keep finding consistency and these guys feel like they can grow more together over the course of the season.
So I'm going to go lower than you. I see what you're saying. Things have gotten a little bit better, but just looking at a season whole, I'm still sticking with under the weather. I think he is our first guy that's hit this category. But just that 8-8 start, you had that low run. I think for a minute there, he was in the life support category.
Yeah.
And
I
that's
think
where I
if you
bumped
checked
him
in
up
after the Maryland game, some people would tell you that.
After Maryland, after Florida State, you probably both of those he's on life support. Now that's where I move him up. I'm not ready to move him up all the way to on the mend.
I will say about Adrian Autry, it's interesting to talk about where he stands with the program. He's been given a pretty tough hand this year so far. If you had to say who are the 2 guys that you don't want to get injured and miss major time, it might be J.J. Starling and Donnie Freeman. Like maybe you would say Lampkin, but it was certainly Starling was 1A and Freeman was either 1B or 1C. So he's been given a pretty tough hand in terms of the injury card.
Yeah, what are you going to ask of a guy whose top player is out for 8 games and then your top freshman goes out right when he comes back? So there is room or potential for, if they would have strung some things together, it just wouldn't have been really, it's not really fair for a lot of the expectations that Syracuse fans have given him for a lot of the season. Obviously, 8-8 isn't great, but you got to look at it through a different shell and different perspective of haven't had the team that you wanted.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And we're going to get into our final words here as we close up shop on the double overtime. About 10 minutes to go till we let you go after Syracuse gets the win over Boston College. Griffin, you ready? Can I toss it to you for the first final word?
You can. And my first final word would be this offensive model is right now, it's working. But this offensive model is not sustainable. It's just not going to happen this way. It'll work against Boston College. It'll work against Georgia Tech. Just, hey, J.J. Starling, he'll just lead the way for the whole thing. But eventually, teams are going to figure you out. You cannot go back-to-back games you can go back-to-back games, rather, J.J. Starling doing it all. But over time, it's going to catch up to you. Today, 29 field goals, only 8 assists. Needs to be more cohesive as a unit. Again, 5 for 15 from 3. Not a great showing there. This offensive performance, you put up 79 again today, it'll work against these lower quality ACC teams, which you've been so far. But once you take a step up in competition, it's going to fall flat on its face.
I'm interested to see on Tuesday. As I mentioned, I'm a bigger believer in JJ's going to score a lot no matter who they play. I think you think that certain teams are going to be able to shut them down, and Syracuse won't know where to go after that. My final word, I'm going back to the mound of mediocre that I called the ACC, and I'm going to double down on that. When you look at Syracuse's schedule going forward, there quite literally is one game on the calendar that you say, oh, they've got really slim chances to win that game. They are severely outmatched, and that is Duke. Outside of that, in the ACC, anybody can beat anybody. Top to bottom, there are a whole bunch of average basketball teams. There are some teams that are slightly above average. One of those teams is Louisville. They'll come to the Dome on Tuesday night. But Louisville on your home court, I say Syracuse has a solid shot of winning that game with the way they've been playing basketball. And so, for Syracuse going forward in the rest of this season, you have a whole bunch of chances against a bunch of average basketball teams, most of which are probably not going to make the NCAA tournament. So can you beat up on all of those average basketball teams? Can you go out and win more than half of these games? Can you dominate against the average competition in what has become an average basketball conference? If you can, there might be something to salvage out of this season for Syracuse.
I think that's a fair point, especially if, like you said, Duke, you're going to get stormed. I mean, they might come in and beat you by 40. As if they play if Cooper Flagg plays like he did today with 42.
He scored a lot today.
They could come in, blow the doors off you. But really, I mean, there's a couple other tough games. UNC obviously is always going to be tough. I mean, they've had a down year this year, though. I think on the road at Clemson's going to be real tough. But hey, you start getting some momentum. If you manage to beat Louisville and Notre Dame, now you're looking at 4 in a row. You can kind of get rolling a little bit. Maybe Donnie comes back with a new life like JJ had. JJ came back with a new life in him. Maybe Donnie has that. And maybe they combine together well, and you have a little fluctuation where this team starts getting downhill and have some momentum with it.
Yeah, and I actually, for part of my thought on this team, I go back to the Georgetown game, a game that Syracuse probably should have won. And they did that game without J.J. Starling. And Georgetown was healthy. Syracuse without Starling had a lead for a lot of it, had real good chances to win that game, didn't. Look at Georgetown. Ed Cooley's got that team in the tournament conversation at 12-4. They've lost a couple here in a row, but they've lost to UConn and Marquette, two top 10 teams. Where
really good squad,
I mean, they had a shot against Marquette. That was a tie game in the last couple of minutes, and the same thing against Connecticut today. Right, Georgetown is hanging tough with some of these top teams. I see no reason why Syracuse, with Starling back, he's a veteran guy that can anchor the offense. He's running the point right now. I see no reason that Syracuse can't compete with all of these teams except for maybe Duke. And at that point, it's just about how can you get the job done in more games than you don't down the stretch.
And it comes down to college basketball, especially when it comes to the important games. It's run by your guards. You have your experienced guards. And right now, I absolutely believe in this performance of J.J. Strong. You would like him to have a backcourt partner, a Robin, his Batman. You don't have that right now, but you know what? If someone can step up, take that leap, maybe Donnie Freeman's that guy. Maybe Eddie Lampkin becomes that guy, more on the front court side. You never know what can happen, and they've flashed some potential. Just got to keep it rolling.
Yeah, what do you look for on Tuesday? What's one thing that you're really interested to watch in that game?
I really think I want Elijah Moore to get out of this slump. I think this is a game where you come back at home. I think the crowd will be pretty solid on Tuesday, winning 2 in a row, starting to see some momentum. I don't think it'll be by any means good. Maybe that first shot from Elijah Moore goes in.
Yeah.
And maybe the steps start rolling a little bit, that I think he could get himself a little bit more momentum. What about you?
Yeah, you talk about that. I'm interested if you can get either Elijah Moore or Chris Bell in any one game shooting well, then I think that's a nice thing to see. I think you get one or the other going, and you've got something good going there offensively. I already mentioned that I think J.J. Starling's going to have a big night. Interested to see how Louisville tries
more than 26 on
him.
Tuesday night.
Yep, I did say that. I also think it'll be fascinating to watch Syracuse, as we kind of expect without Donnie Freeman, try and compete on the glass against a really good rebounding team in Louisville. This is a team that will turn you over. They'll push the pace. They do a lot of things right now under a new head coach, and I really like the way that program is trending after a lot of bad years in the last half decade. So it's a fun team to watch, Louisville. It'll be interesting to see how Syracuse handles them on Tuesday night here on WAER. Syracuse will have the coverage, a 7 o'clock tip and 6:30 countdown to tip-off. Double overtime goes until 11 p.m. that night here on WAER, so we hope you'll join us all evening on Tuesday. With Griffin Marcy, I'm Andrew Selliver. We appreciate you joining us this afternoon into evening. Syracuse takes down Boston College. Thank yous to our producer, Hudson Ridley. Tyler Aiken, our engineer. Andrew Della Piana joined us as our reporter from Chestnut Hill. And Jared Valentin, Josh Richardson, and Nate Martin helped us behind the scenes as a part of our WAER Sports Talk desk. I'm Andrew Selliver saying good night here in Syracuse. Orange have won 2 straight.